There's nothing quite like the smell of freshly homemade bread. And today I'm going to share with you how to make my wholemeal loaf, enriched with honey and extra virgin olive oil. A simple and easy recipe whether you're a beginner or a veteran. So let's get started. Into a stand mixer fitted with a dough hook, add in your wholemeal flour, instant yeast and salt. Next, into a jug of lukewarm water, add in your honey and give it a gentle stir to dissolve completely. I'm using honey for its flavour, but also the natural sugars will help feed the yeast. And lastly, add the olive oil to the jug of water. Next, start your stand mixer on a low speed and slowly drizzle in the liquids until it all incorporates. In this recipe we're working at 80% hydration, and in the case of white flour this would be a very difficult hydration to work with. But with wholemeal flour, due to the high protein content and the bran and germ present in the flour, it absorbs a lot more water, making it easier to work with. If you want to know more about dough hydration and how we calculate percentages, I'll leave a link for my article in the description below. Once all the liquids had incorporated, I let the dough mix for 2 minutes on a low speed, and you should have something that looks a bit like this. This was just to give the wholemeal flour time to absorb the liquids, since absorption time for wholemeal flour is marginally longer than white flour. Next, we continue to knead the dough on a high speed for about 7 to 8 minutes until the dough is smooth and forms a ball. This is the critical stage where the gluten develops, transforming those raw proteins into a strong, elastic web that traps air. Once the dough starts to pull away clean from the sides of the bowl, this is a good time to stop, and the dough should look something like this, smooth and elastic and clinging to the dough hook rather than the bowl. Now carefully remove the dough from the hook. You'll find this is easier if you slightly dampen your fingers with some water. Then turn the dough out onto a clean surface. At this stage it should feel warm, slightly tacky, but not overly sticky. And now we're going to move into a series of slap and folds. This technique is about more than just mixing. It's about aligning those gluten strands. Lift the dough and slap it onto the counter and fold it over itself. And repeat this rhythm for about 2 to 3 minutes. You'll feel the dough begin to resist you. That's exactly what we want. This is a sign that the dough is becoming structured. You'll notice I'm not adding any flour to the surface here. We want to keep the hydration exactly where it is. I simply dampen my hands with a little bit of water. It acts as a natural non-stick barrier without altering the recipe. At this stage I check the progress with a window pane test. Gently stretch a small piece of dough between your fingers. We're looking for it to become translucent without snapping. Keep in mind, because this is wholemeal flour, the brown flakes act like tiny shards of glass. They may occasionally pierce the delicate membrane and cause a small tear. Don't worry, as long as it stretches significantly before breaking, your gluten is ready. Next we move into shaping the dough. Use a bench scraper to tuck the edges of the dough under itself, using the friction of the counter to create tension on the surface. You'll see the skin of the dough start to tighten and smooth out. Finish the shaping with your hands, cupping the dough and rotating it in a circular motion until you have a proud, taut ball. This tension is what allows the dough to rise upwards rather than outwards during bulk fermentation, also known as the first proof. Using your bench scraper, carefully lift the dough and place into a lightly greased bowl. And cover. I'm using a shower cap as I can reuse this later. Allow this to proof for an hour to an hour and a half or until it's doubled in size. I've placed mine into my homemade dough prover, which I've set to 26 degrees Celsius. I'll leave a link in the description below for how I made my homemade prover. Next we prepare for the final shape. Lightly grease your loaf tin with a touch of spray oil or butter, just enough to ensure a clean release later, and set it aside. Now let's check the progress on our dough. The dough should look plump and full of life and have doubled in size. Using the poke test, lightly flour your finger and give it a gentle press. If it springs back slowly but leaves a slight indentation, it's perfectly proved. Next, lightly flour your workbench, and using a bench scraper that's lightly floured, Carefully work your way around the bowl, releasing the dough from the side, and gently turn the dough out onto the lightly floured surface. You'll notice I'm being very careful here. We aren't punching the air out. We want to preserve those gases that the yeast has worked so hard to create. For the final shape, gently stretch the dough out into a rough rectangle. Now we begin the envelope fold. Bring the bottom third up, then fold the sides, and finally bring the top down. This creates a neat layered package, but we need to reinforce it. We're going to stitch the dough, pinching the shoulders and the hips together towards the center. Now roll the dough away from you into a tight log. As you roll, use your pinkies to tuck the dough underneath, dragging it slightly against the bench. The friction creates a taut, smooth skin on the surface of the loaf. And lastly, pinch and stretch the ends and tuck in under itself to completely seal the dough. With the tension set and the shape secured, place it seam side down into your prepared tin. We're ready for the final rise. If you notice at this stage, there are already air bubbles forming across the surface of the dough. This is going to create little air pockets in the final bake. But if you notice any large air bubbles, give them a gentle pinch to release the air, so you don't end up with huge air pockets in the final bake. Next, cover the tin. I'm reusing the shower cap I used from the first rise. Place the tin back into the prover or warm area of your kitchen. We're looking for the dough to prove for roughly an hour, or until it has increased in volume by about 75 to 80%. You want to see a dough that's plump and full of life. If you overproof it now, it might collapse in the heat, so keep a close eye on the rise. Before it hits the heat, we give the surface a gentle wash with milk. This does more than just add a golden sheen. The sugars in the milk caramelize in the oven, giving us a beautiful, deeply burnished crust that contrasts perfectly with the soft interior. Slide the tin into the center of the oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 356 degrees Fahrenheit, and over the next 35 minutes, the kitchen will fill with that unmistakably nutty aroma of toasted wholemeal and honey. You're looking for a firm, mahogany crust and a loaf that sounds hollow when tapped. Patience is the hardest part of baking. Once it's out, leave the loaf in the tin for 15 to 20 minutes. This allows the internal steam to settle, making it easier to turn out without damaging the structure. Finally, move it onto a wire rack to completely cool. Cutting into a hot loaf might be tempting, but letting it rest ensures the crumb sets perfectly. A beautiful, honest, handmade loaf, ready to be enjoyed. Slice it thick and slather it with butter before devouring. I really hope you've enjoyed following the journey of this loaf. There's something so rewarding about mastering a classic wholemeal bread right in your own kitchen. If you found this helpful, please do hit the like button and subscribe for more bakes. You can find the full recipe along with my guides on hydration and how to make a dough prover in the description below, along with the links for all the equipment. If you have any questions about the process, drop a comment. I'd love to hear how your bake turned out. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy baking.